Hi, I'm Patrick Maloney, City Hall reporter for the London Free Press and lfpress.com, and I'm here with my boss, our city editor, Greg Van Morsel, and we're discussing City Hall in London, the week that was and the week that will be. Pretty clear, Greg, that I guess I would say the biggest story this week was Ward 9 Councillor Dale Henderson's comments about the Canadian Cancer Society's presentation to Council regarding toughened smoking bylaws. He made.
This is the banning.
Banning smoking outdoors. Parks and sports fields. I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer. But he suggested that they do some real research into what's causing cancer. Real research, yeah, in air quotes. He discussed this PhD in cancer research. He's quote unquote said should do some real research. Pretty clearly stated that he's not convinced that cigarettes cause cancer. This PhD said there's overwhelming research that says that they do. I think a lot of people would agree with that. He claimed that
even the cigarette companies agree.
Yeah, even the cigarette companies agree. Yeah, absolutely. So he claimed also that I'm not going to get into all of it, but he claimed also that he'd run a clinic that, in his word, cured cancer in Hamilton, or at least at the very least reversed it in patients through some alternative methods. And he then claimed that our report on the Free Press report on his conversation, which was recorded and posted to lfpress.com, was fiction in a radio interview the next day. So I don't know if you had a reaction to that whole thing with the councillor this week.
Well, I think he's clearly wrong, right?
I mean, there's enough research, I think.
Yeah,
and like you said, even the cigarette
companies, like through the courts, right, have had to admit they spent gazillions fighting it for years, but that cat's out of the bag, and they're all doing settlements now in the billions of dollars with states and provinces across the country for healthcare costs. But having said that other issue about banning smoking in outdoor public places, I guess it makes sense, right? You don't want to be smoking at a kid's soccer game. It sends all kinds of bad messages. You might be breathing smoke on people, whatever. But most places don't have that. Like it's a real checkerboard thing in Ontario.
Most municipalities in Ontario?
Most municipalities don't. It's all over the board, and you'd think that the province would just step in, and just like it has banned smoking in indoor places, other than people's homes, they'd say, also here. But instead they've left it to municipalities. So you're going to get these weird, wonky arguments like this, where a guy stands up and deigns to take on a PhD scientist on the issue.
Right, in open session.
Yeah, and in my mind, it's kind of an example of what happens, I think, when issues that are clearly provincial in nature, health, lifestyle, they should just do it. They should not be leaving this to municipalities.
But they're leaving it to municipalities to do all the dirty work, the wet work out the kinks, and then the province can swoop in and use that as their template when they do eventually have a blanket rule. Am I right? Or is that too cynical?
Or to standardize it. But it fits a pattern, right? I think you've hit it on the head. It's kind of a hot potato. They prefer not to deal with hot potatoes. The original smoking bans were municipal smoking bans, and they very checkerboard too. This place has it, that place doesn't. Then finally they had a standard, the smoke-free workplace law, or whatever it's called in Ontario. They did the same thing with Sunday shopping. Like for 10 years they let municipalities dicker about, you can shop here, but you can't shop there. You can't. And finally they're just like,
right.
Like they should just step in. And when they don't step in, I think that's what happens. You see people who set themselves up as sort of tin pot experts. And they're not. I mean, who would tangle with a PhD scientist on an issue like this?
Dale Henderson would.
Unless they were also a PhD scientist.
Right, and that raises a larger issue, and I think that lost in the debate, or lost in the sort of storm that followed it, is what this says at a bigger issue. For one, there are many people with concerns about Councillor Henderson's decorum at council, the tenor of his comments, the substance of his comments, his ability to understand basic City Hall issues. This is 2 years into his career as a politician. The training wheels are off at this point. But beyond that, when comments like this are made, whether they're by him or by someone else on council, and I think this council has a few candidates off the top of your head you could point to, it undermines the general, I think a reasonable Londoner's confidence in council and in council's ability to run the city is undermined through things like this. They see this and they think, oh my goodness, are we seriously having a city councillor who would say, cigarettes may not be linked to cancer? And that's encoded in that sentence is all sorts of concerns about. Are these people able to turn around our unemployment rate? These are the people that are going to be pushing an agenda for increasing city growth.
So the point you're making is that if you can't recognize the overwhelming evidence on that one, how are you going to deal with the very nuanced issues?
Well, it just speaks to the larger issue that I think there are a lot of very reasonable Londoners, a lot of very informed Londoners who don't have a lot of confidence in this council, and it's incidents like that that exacerbate that problem. And we're only 2 years in.
Is it amateur hour?
Well, in some ways it is.
Yeah.
I mean, not for everybody. I mean, we have some excellent city councilors, and it's not even a matter of experience. You look at Matt Brown, you look at Denise Brown. They have as much experience in municipal politics as Dale Henderson, and they've both done what I would consider to be a very good job. I think they've really worked hard and they've learned a lot. So it's not a question of experience, and it's not a question of, and it's not even a question of intelligence. Dale Henderson's an electrical engineer. I mean, this guy is very intelligent. It's something else. I can't put my finger on it. It's a question of decorum, and it's not just him. It's several councillors, and I'm telling you that you get that sense. There's that lack of confidence.
Is it decorum, or is it he's an example of a guy who, and he's been a very successful businessman. Right?
Oh yeah,
point that out. Apparently, he's made pots of money, but. Is he the kind of guy that, he kind of does things by his gut and kind of like he seems like he speaks in sort of, old chestnuts and nostrums that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to specifically focus on him because that's almost unfair. I'm saying generally that the public perception of this council is not, I would not say is a good one, and I would say that it was very good. There was a lot of momentum when this council started, and much of it was based on this optimism around Joe Fontana, whose favorite word is incredible. This is an incredible opportunity. We're an incredible city. We have an incredible chance. Here we are 2 years later. Are we still incredible? Sure. If you ask the mayor that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that would follow the mayor's lead on that and are still enthusiastic about him. I'm just not sure that they're as enthusiastic.
Right.
And I think that part of it is that you've got in some corners of council, you've got people who undermine the public's confidence in council as a whole. I mean, I spoke with one councillor this week who said, "I'm embarrassed."
How does it affect the bureaucrats who are there to give politicians advice when they see something like that, somebody tangling with, for lack of a better word, let's say an expert in the field?
Well, let's pretend it's not the Canadian Cancer Society PhD who volunteered her time and looked like she was about 25 and got censured by a public official, an elected official. Let's talk about a senior city manager, John Fleming, the exact same city councillor. 2 weeks ago said to John Fleming, your department is vindictive in the way that it treats some developers. He publicly said that, and he said it to John Fleming. He wasn't talking about John Fleming.
At a meeting.
At a public meeting, yeah. And the person he was talking about, in my experience, is vindictive is not a word. Whatever the opposite of vindictive is, that would be the word that I would use to describe them. And certainly John Fleming's one of the most respected bureaucrats at City Hall.
So, Patrick, looking ahead to next week, what can we expect out of City Hall?
Well,
what's grabbing your attention?
Well, there's a council meeting Tuesday, so there's always lots of interesting stuff that happen at that. And
Tuesday this time because of the holiday, I guess, right?
No, it's always Tuesday now. Remember they moved it from Monday last year?
Yep.
They don't like Mondays. Like I said, I'm very curious to see if the Ward 9 councillor stands up and says, remember that vindictive comment? I went too far with that. And if he doesn't, does the mayor or the city manager stand up and say, or the planning chair, Bud Polhill, stand up and say, I think you should apologize. Right. So I'm curious to see if that happens. I don't know that there'd be any fireworks over it, but I know that there's some members of council that are demanding to see that. And
it'd be interesting, the new city manager, right? Because we haven't really seen his heavy hand in action. Maybe he needs to, just to set a future.
Set the tone?
Yeah.
Well, because Jeff Fielding had no problem body slamming a few politicians if he had to when he felt they were getting out of line, and to his eternal credit. So we'll see. But anyway, so that's that. So anyway, for Greg Van Morsel, my boss, I'm Patrick Maloney signing off from lfpress.com.